So this is essentially the review that I had always been looking for, and the review I never had. All what I could title all in the search of the let's say perfect brake pad. So this is comparing the Hawk CCRG, the Hawk HE Pluses to the Endless CCRGs. I ran the Hawks. So quick recap, I have a 2015 Sign for S, and I ran the Hawks HE Pluses from just about 4 years, from summer of 2021, if I remember correctly, or 2020. I think it was 2021. 2021, I think. Or wait, let me bear with me now. Or no, actually, now that I think about it, I think it was 2020 I put them on. So let's say 2020 up until 2025, crazy, it's been 5 years. And the reason why I switched them out is having ran the Hawk pads for so much time, as much as I got used to them, I thought they were, a perfect pad, so to speak. Having not used anything else outside of OEM, they've destroyed all my wheels. And they destroyed, I have a set of work Sirikais or Kawamis, of which they start to rust on the paint. And back then I was able to maintain the car a lot more easily, let's say. And I thought on matte paint it would wear worse, but now on my previously glossy NKRPF ones, they've essentially and absolutely destroyed the clear coat finish on them, on more so the front wheels than the rears, given how braking distribution works on a car. It's like 60 to 70% around that on the front, and the rest in the rear, give or take. But so essentially I was looking for a new pad that felt the same, performed the same, or at least similar to the Hawks. So similar stopping power, similar, from what I understood in terms of brakes, just essentially similar feel in the pedal, not knowing that there's a difference in feel between brake pads, despite coming from stock previously, having been so long, but also ultimate braking power, of which it was still excessive for street driving, which I predominantly do. I don't drive on the track. Yeah, it was great on the canyon, stuff like that. I definitely want something OEM plus at that, but at the cost of destroying my wheels and having to, maintain them. Hawks are just known to be very corrosive, of which you can easily find articles on these pads online. So I looked at Endless just because I know Endless makes reputable. It's a reputable, well-known company, and they make good options that come in the ceramic-based material, which I didn't even know about much back then. Understanding now that the Hawks are metallic, predominantly metallic or semi-metallic, whereas a lot of Endless are ceramic, from what I'm aware of. Granted, Hawk makes a ceramic option. Almost every brand has a ceramic option at that. Far fewer than the metallic options that they provide. Whereas with Endless, it seems a lot more balanced. Or it seems like more of their stuff is ceramics, and then their higher end stuff, for what it's worth. Not saying that they can't have high end ceramics, but they start to become more metallic. So till today, I've had these pads on actually for about 2 weeks, I'd say, maybe 2.5 weeks. It's hard for me to remember the exact date, maybe almost 3 weeks actually. And having ran them, for past few weeks, or past 2 to 3 weeks, let's say, trying to remember the first I put them on. I was like, these are god awful. So, and as far as I'm aware, or not so aware, I only spoke to one person. He said Endless have the worst feel. And when he told me that prior to even buying the pads, this was, more than a year ago, I'm like, oh, what does he mean by, they have the worst feel? What is, like, how can that be a thing? It's like, don't all upgraded pads, like, OEM Plus or hybrid pads shouldn't it be like more or less the same? Why would it be like a 9-day difference when you're saying that they have the worst feel? I'm like, oh, it can't be that noticeable. So with the endless pads, I threw them on. These are the CCRGs. I didn't want to go with the MX-72s. I almost said to myself, I'd rather do too much than too little. Again, not knowing if these would be more powerful than the Hawks, whatever that means, or if they'd be less powerful, let's say overall, than the Hawks. So by comparison, I put them on. I was like, wow, the pedal feels wooden. It's like there's no feel. Now, having been time out of the system, out of the Hawks, obviously the body forgets the feel. The body relearns the car relearns the brakes, etc. That's one thing I was telling myself, shortly after I installed the car, or installed the brakes rather, that whenever you modify the car, you're almost like relearning the body. You're relearning your own body, and your body's relearning how it interacts with the vehicle, and receiving these feedbacks, these how do you say it? These communication inputs, or back and forth, this shared communication between you and the car and you, and how that kind of that interaction takes place. So I'm like, fuck, I'll have to get used to this. So the main thing, the three main points I'd say is, it felt extremely wooden. There's no feel, and then when you get on the brakes entirely, they almost just. I was running AO52s when I first put them on. I'm now on AD09s. They locked in the ABSs. So obviously I locked in the ABS. I was trying to initiate. I was just doing hard braking as I was bedding in the brakes. So I didn't have to get near stop, but I was getting pretty hard on the brakes, just trying to get that surface applied onto the new rotors or discs that I had just installed. And I'm like, wow, these feel awful. I'm like, fuck, do I need heat into them? Like, one beautiful thing about the Hawks was no matter hot or cold, they performed, if I remember correctly, more or less the same. So that was the second point. And then, so it's like there's no feel at the beginning. I almost got in an accident driving. I was getting off the highway on like the second day I had them installed, and I was following someone kind of close. I'm like, oh, they just stopped really hard. And then I stopped my car. And then as soon as I stopped my car, obviously I was just missing that braking force I had previously been so used to. So that was a big shock to me. I'm like, oh man, these don't feel the same. And then once you're on them entirely, like past 80%, just on them full force, it locks up the rear, it locks up all the wheels at that just so hard and so aggressively, where it's like I don't even need this amount of braking force. So I'll get to the whole window kind of range of braking force in a second. But the last thing that was missing too is there was no sound. So those are the 3 points. It's kind of a benefit to most people to say, they would say, it's actually a benefit than a detriment to the pads when there's no sound to them, So that was actually one factor that, coming from stock to the Hawks, that was part of an improvement that, one, again, obviously I got used to, but two, I grew to love, right? I grew to love the sound that the Hawks had created as an output of braking. It was an audible factor that communicated to my ears. So I felt it through my hands, through my body, the sensation of the stopping power, the inertia, the reversing, almost like this strong deceleration that takes place between you as a moving object, or you inside this moving object, this vehicle, and the road and time, etc. And hearing that noise communicated an audible sound, like, okay, this is what's going on. It happened quite in sync and in equilibrium, which I had very much appreciated back then. And that's something I actually very much want to hold on to. So I said to myself, whether the Endless are as loud, or if they're louder, which I had doubted, or if they're quieter, I put that in quotes, I'm okay with that. But the Endless are near silent. So I started to think of these factors. I'm like, how is it that these brakes are near silent, or silent at that, at least at colder or like moderate temps, street driving temps, yet have stronger overall braking force at the limit, or so I felt or sensed, given that the first initial part of it, there was no feel at all. And then just the whole lack of feel, and like I said, so the lack of feel, and also when you are getting on it, at the upper range, or like the second half of the range, it's too strong. So in a sense, there is actually greater modulation, because you have these different options of how you want to brake. Whereas I'm going to go to the Hawks in a second, but essentially in the Hawks, it felt overall the same from start to finish. So whether you were half on the pedal, let's say whether you were 25% or 50%, that kind of range of braking, if you look at the curve, it was more like linear, whereas like the endless are like, it's way more, it's like a reverse, not parabola, like it's exponential, but in like a reverse kind of sense. Obviously plateauing near the top, but whereas the Hawks were a lot more like linear from start to finish, whereas the endless, I'd say, were a lot more like, the curvature is a lot more aggressive, even if the top piece isn't as high as the Hawks, or so it felt as high or higher. But again, I think that's just because of the start to finish zone is so wide compared to the Hawks, rather, mixing them compared to the Hawks, where again the Hawks were such like a narrow kind of span of braking ability, which honestly for autocross or honestly for street driving was fine, because I'm like, when I want to stop, if I want to stop gently, I can stop gently. I'm just hardly on the Hawks. But even if the stop pretty aggressively, it wasn't too aggressive, let's say. And then if I have to actually stop, I'll obviously get full on them, get the full force. Whereas the endless, it's almost like that same 25% of pedal force I put in the endless, I'm like hardly braking, or so it felt. And then I put in 50%, you're kind of still in that early zone. So now you're 50% down, but you only feel, let's say, 30%. Then you're 75% down, you now feel 40%. Then you're 100% down, and now you feel obviously 100%. So it's kind of weird how that worked or how that felt. But that's one thing. And then yeah, again, in terms of the sound, I said to myself, there's no way these are this quiet. And then I looked online. I'm still not completely clear. Like I asked, or I quote unquote spoke to AI, and I think ChatGPT was saying that these are a hybrid, so they're partially metallic, partially ceramic, or that they are ceramic, or that they're fully semi-metallic or metallic, etc. I'm not sure, but so these qualities that you find in a pad, these qualities that you find in the Hawks are essentially factors that are connected to it being semi-metallic. So I start to tell myself, I want something that, it almost sounds like I want something that dusts less, but still makes noise, and still has some part of the Hawks. Obviously I'm picking and choosing, but essentially I wanted as much of the Hawk as possible. If there could be just a Hawk equivalent, like let's say it's a Hawk HP Plus, but with less dust, I'd be cool with that. Or a Hawk HP Plus that even if it lacks, 5 to 10% feel, and or has 5 to 10% less of braking force, sure, but it has less dust. I'm willing to make that trade-off. Am I willing to trade off it having all lack of feel by comparison, like so much less? Probably not. And am I also able to have something where there's little to no noise? Again, that too, preferably not as well. So yeah, as soon as I had the pads on for the first couple of days, I remember I was like, I don't even want to drive this car anymore. I so-called hate, that's a strong word, but I don't like driving this car anymore, because it was a huge kind of shift and shock. And then part of me was like, I had to put the Hawks back on. I was, again, speaking to ChatGPT for quite some time, quite a few days. I spoke to a local sales guy at a shop that distributes or sells, parts of like these. I even spoke to the shop in which I bought these from. They're okay, they have some knowledge, but they're not knowledgeable in this exact domain, like comparing part to part and stuff like that. They're like, yeah, I don't know, they were giving me advice like, oh, just go to the MX-72s. I'm like, well, if you want no dust, I'm like, well, that'll be probably worse. Dust, even less, sure, but have less feel, less stocking power, and have less noise. So they didn't even know what to tell me. And then everything regarding like metallic and semi-metallic and all the rest, they had no idea how to answer. So, and I spoke to a few guys in the States, kind of the same thing, gave me a few other recommendations. I'm like, quite literally, I'm like, wow, it seems like I'm now in this zone where I'm searching for the perfect brake pad, if it even at all exists. So back on the topic of ceramic versus semi-metallic once more. So semi-metallic pads seem to have that level, that kind of quality or feature that are similar to the Hawk HP Pluses, on average, let's say, not all semi-metallics, because you can get an Hawk HPS, and I think that's semi-metallic, and it's like an OEM equivalent, and I've felt it before, kind of lacks feel, etc. But the Hawks, that initial bite, so there's a value called the mu, right? You know, there's a brand called Project Mu, but mu is, I think this is like a level of physics. This is a physical value of bite or braking power or initial force, the stopping regarding brakes, that is used as a level or as used as a measure in stalking power, let's say. So there's graphs that are published online via Hawk, via Project Mu, if I remember correctly, I think, and Endless, just, you know, 3 examples. There's a few, like there's other brands like WinMax and stuff like that. But anyways, where they publish their charts, and I saw that I don't have the chart on me, but I saw that the Hawks, they essentially go from like a low 50 or mid 0.55 to a 0.6 or 0.65. Again, if I remember correctly. Whereas, dude, the Endless ran from like a 0.38 or something to a 0.45. So the ranges, it seems like lower in the Endless. So the lack of feel, I think, is what that equates to, both in terms of stalking power and the bite, etc., how that translates to you in the car and your body in motion. Less so how you feel on the pedal itself, I think. I think that's more a quality of ceramics, but apparently ceramics, again, if I remember correctly, don't generally have high mu values compared to semi-metallics if you want to get a high mu. And apparently semi-metallics are just prone to dusting really bad, and Hawks are, it's just such a dirty compound. Whereas this Endless, again, I've had them on now, I'm starting to like them. I'm like, oh wow, the dust isn't, I've only washed the car once and they seemed okay when washed. They seem to come off a lot easier just with a spray wash. Obviously, it's always good to have some sort of abrasion and wiping them down with a cloth of some sort, or even better, spraying some layer or some like spraying wheel cleaner on it, like brake cleaner, wheel cleaner on the wheels, and then washing them down and scrubbing that on, etc. That's the least you can do on the spokes, at least. But yeah, I guess in my total conclusion, so kind of, it's more like apples to oranges. I was just really shocked between the CCRGs and the Hawks, and I told myself, man, the Hawks lasted me 5 years, give or take, right? And when I took them off, they still had over 80% of the pad life on them. Even, granted, I only drove them maybe like 40, not even like 30K kilometers, 30 to 35,000 kilometers. Let's say 35 or 30. Let's say 30 to 35. So I'm like, I mean, that's not a lot of, just wait one sec. It's not a lot of miles to begin with, but it also depends on what kind of miles you run it. So I did a few track days with those. I did Till the Dragon, and otherwise it's just kind of daily driven in the summer, spirited drives, canyon runs, not really canyon, just like kind of, windy roads, etc. here and there. But so I still have the Hawks. I might put them back on. Mind you, I'm really dreading the dust. And one solution is I just put the Hawks back on. I get whatever set of wheels I'm running powder coated, whether I have to get them repainted or just powder coating them. And then that should help with that kind of layer of that shield layer, which, I mean, in hindsight, I wish I did. No one told me. I wish I, did my research. Can't blame anyone but myself. Just a learning lesson. And to anyone watching this, as soon as you put on an aftermarket pad, or before you even put on an aftermarket pad, just ceramic coat your wheels. Like, do yourself a huge favor and ceramic coat the wheels. And if you can do, a really, you don't have to even do an expensive job, in my opinion, even whether you do it yourself or at a shop. And it's almost better if you just do a new coat every 6 months, if you can, or like once a year rather. So like at the beginning of each season, and then washing them down and maybe doing another coat after that. So maybe like start and end of the season. Or you could, I guess, do them once every few years, but it's almost better if you just keep them clean before the season ends and before the season starts. So that's my opinion that I want to share. And then in terms of the CCRGs first, and let's just comparing the two together. They're just different pads, while they might be comparable in their use, in kind of not really use cases. Endless are while they might last longer, I'm not really concerned about use life or, wear life and stuff like that, and wear on the rotors. Not at least yet. That's not really a quality I'm concerned about. Consumables are consumables. I don't care about how long stuff lasts. I want to enjoy every minute of it, more so rather than how long will this last, which is on another topic. I'm going to talk about the AO52s versus the 8009s. That'll probably be another video. I'll have to put it on publish. So, that's crazy. That's crazy. So, yeah, I'd say if you're in the market for the CCRGs versus the Hawk HE Pluses or one or the other, you can find their independent reviews on their online, both of which have positive reviews for their use cases. It seems like a lot of the guys who are the tracker, autocross in general, either pad will work for you. Just know these things. So the Hawks will dust a hell of a lot, which is kind of obvious. I didn't really know until I knew. So either way, ceramic coat your wheels, but the Hawks dust a lot. Really high initial bite, really great feel in my opinion. You step on the pedal, really strong bite. It's not overwhelming. You're not going to lock in the ABS, but from start to finish, really great feel, really grabby. You really feel like you're engaging the car, and there's a quality of a noise, albeit very loud. This volume that it outputs, which I think is a very rewarding quality. Which adds to not only the experience, but also adds to, hey, I'm not in a braking, I'm hitting the braking zone, or I'm this much into the brakes, etc. I don't know. It's kind of hard when your brakes squeal as well. In my opinion, that's kind of a cool quality, etc. And then the CCRGs, they have a lot more modulation. That's one thing I would say. The overall braking force, while not rated as high in terms of the mu, I believe once you're on them, they actually brake fairly harder than stop fairly harder, I should say, versus the Hawks, given, me locking the ABS. I tried them at the track recently. In hindsight, I don't remember, it was almost 2021 is when I last, I think 2021 was when I last sent the FRS on the track on the Hawks. So it's been quite some time. So it'd be hard for me to recall, but they worked great. I was doing it's really a 127, but I can say, let's say 126, but no, it's more 127 on them. Anyways, time doesn't matter. It's relative, but they felt great then. They felt great everywhere else, and clearly going from that to this, it felt like a loss. And while it's something you have to get used to, which I'm at a point now today, I'm like, hey, they're not that bad. Thankfully, I've gotten used to them. If I didn't get used to them, I would have had to bite my tongue and just say, I have to find another pad, in which I was kind of searching for all last week, or the week prior, I think, like the last 10 or so days prior to today. I can't remember correctly, but I was searching for another pad. I'm like, I'll try one more pad. We'll see, whether it's Project Mu, like Club Racer, which apparently doesn't feel as good as the Hawks, dusts more than the CCRGs. It sort of makes noise. It's a semi-metallic. So again, it's this whole thing where it's like you're playing with these different things. Again, I just wish there was, like I said, a Hawk HE Plus. If literally give me a Hawk HE Plus or nice or affordable. Again, price isn't a big, like, you got to pay to play. Like if the Endless were perfect, I'd spend $5,000 on pads. Seriously. Okay, maybe not. Maybe like $2,000 all around. But yeah, if there was just a set of Hawks I can get, and the Hawks, if only they had something where I could have them or get them, and then just have even like 25% less dust, they'd literally be perfect. So I was hoping that's what the CCRGs would be. I'd be like, hey, even if I lose 10 to 15 to 25% in feel and in noise, which I didn't even know about because there's no comparison, and all the reviews on their own, the standalone reviews seem to be great. I'm like, yeah, that's a valid trade-off I'd be willing to make, or willing to have, but instead, they feel worse. There's no sound. The feel in terms of how they brake too, not in terms of just how the pedal feels, but the modulation. I don't like that initial bite I had before, and then what? It's like I'm like, might as well run a stock pad. Honestly, it's like a stock pad is almost the same, and it'll actually have less dust. Yeah, it'll lack a lot of the feel that you got from the Hawks, but also the stopping power. I don't need the max stopping power I get out of the CCRGs, and I just like the feel as well. So that's where I'm kind of at right now. And again, so the CCRGs are great if you want, in my opinion, a pad that you can street, that you can daily, but also take to the track on occasional track days, that even if it's like, I think like a 90-10, let's say, who knows? That's my opinion, again, despite only doing one track day. They clean well, despite doing one track day. They clean fairly well. From just this limited experience, I can update this later on, but I think they clean well. They don't dust as bad as the Hawks. They're fairly silent once you get temp into them, let's say on the track or even on the stretch. I drove them hard during a toge session last week, yeah, like 8 or 9 days ago. I ripped it, and then just near the end, on initial stopping, like a hard bite, trying to get the car slow down, there's no sound. Then just as you're squealing down from like 20 to 0, sound starts to squeal in a bit, but it's only like maybe, it's fairly faint. It's not like the loud scream or growl the scream you get out of the Hawks. So I'd say that sums up my comparison. You know, it's a long video, it's something to listen to. It's more just for myself in reference to have. And maybe in the description I can post an article or just post, you know, like a short blurb or paragraph between the two, and, you know, make this video, for what it's worth, optional to watch. I mean, if you've gotten this far, that's great, but yeah, just trying to release some of my car thoughts out there for what it's worth, and more so thoughts that are otherwise residing just in my head, on my phone or on paper or via text, and trying to do my best, you know, as time moves forward, to help put these out, not only for myself, sure, to share with others, but just as my way to unclutter my thoughts in this kind of internal repository, which gets on the topic of memory today. You know, we've outsourced memory. We no longer need to remember anything because memory has been, you know, outsourced to the digital, to the hyperreal, to, you know, faculties of hard drives and clouds and all different types of online storage and the media swarm, etc. But that's something else. So yep, Hawk HV pluses versus endless CCRGs. And yeah, so gonna run these for a bit and just enjoy them for the rest of the season. The one benefit, I would say, the one cool thing is they're blue. You know, it adds some style points, I think, to the car. But I think my main goal was, one, less dust. I think I get that, and it's easier to combat less dust just by powder coating the wheels and cleaning them more often, which, given my physical condition, it's actually quite difficult. But again, in hindsight, I do wish I powder coated them. But again, that can be solved regardless of what pad you're running. So if you like the feel of the HE pluses, the sound, the noise, the feel, the mute, the initial bite, the stopping power properties, etc., and hate the dust, at least the dust is something you can so-called, you know, fight against or kind of resolve through, you know, obviously frequent cleaning, maintenance, but again, powder coating in hindsight, or ceramic coating, to rephrase it again. Whereas to gain back feel and all these other things, noise, which, if these are properties you like that are otherwise lost, are hard to regain or find. Like, you can't just ceramic coat in, like this kind of example. There's nothing you can do to get this back without changing the pad entirely, which also again comes down to pad properties, if it's a ceramic pad versus a metallic pad. So that's it for the Hawks versus the Endless, and I think that sums up everything. And yeah, this is my first take, and I'll leave it at that.